eIDAS 2.0 will quietly reshape how your organization identifies users, signs agreements, and operates across EU borders. In this module, you'll see what's changing from eIDAS 1.0, why the EUDI wallet is central, and what it means for you as a relying party. Under eIDAS 1.0, governments mainly recognized each other's national eID schemes to support cross-border public services. That was valuable, but narrow in scope and uneven across member states. eIDAS 2.0 shifts from, if available, please recognize, to wallets must be made available and must interoperate. It extends beyond the public sector into private services like banking, telecom, and large platforms. Strategically, this moves digital identity from fragmented, country-specific solutions to a common EU-level infrastructure you can actually build products and customer journeys on. To ground eIDAS 2.0, let's briefly anchor on the original regulation from 2014. eIDAS 1.0 created a single EU legal framework for electronic identification and trust services. Its biggest breakthrough was giving qualified electronic signatures the same legal effect as a handwritten signature. It also standardized services such as electronic seals, timestamps, and electronic registered delivery, built on mutual recognition of national eID schemes across member states. Now, why did eIDAS 1.0 underdeliver in practice? First, adoption was limited. Many citizens either didn't have access to a notified eID or found it too cumbersome for everyday use. Second, identity stayed mostly in public sector silos. Banks, platforms, and telcos that mattered to users were often outside the ecosystem or integrated in ad hoc ways. Third, user experience was fragmented. Different assurance levels, different flows, and weak mobile support. The result was predictable. People defaulted to global platforms for login and identity, keeping Europe dependent on non-EU big tech. eIDAS 2.0 also sits inside a bigger EU policy picture. Under the Digital Decade agenda, by 2030, almost all key public services must be online. To get there, the EU is pushing three connected pillars. First, the digital single market. Citizens and businesses should access digital services across borders as easily as within one country. Second, the European data strategy. People must remain in control of how their data is shared and reused. Third, digital sovereignty, reducing dependency on non-EU platforms and strengthening cybersecurity. eIDAS 2.0 and the EUDI Wallet sit right at the intersection of these three goals. eIDAS 2.0 isn't a distant idea. It's running on a fixed, staged timetable that should guide your planning. The legal basis is already in force, so the if this is happening debate is over. Next come implementing acts that lock in technical specifications and certification. That's when your architects and vendors lose room for guesswork. By late 2026, every member state must issue EUDI wallets. Around late 2027, the pressure shifts to you. In critical sectors, accepting wallets becomes mandatory, so your roadmap needs to work backwards from those dates. At the center of eIDAS 2.0 is the European Digital Identity, or EUDI Wallet. Think of it as a secure, government-backed app where people can store and present their identity data across borders. It supports three main use cases: onboarding to prove who you are, sharing specific attributes like age or qualifications, and creating qualified electronic signatures. Crucially, it's designed for privacy, enabling selective disclosure and data minimization rather than all or nothing data sharing. You can imagine the wallet as a secure stack of verified facts about a person. At the base is PID, core identity data such as name, date of birth, and nationality, issued by a member state with high assurance. On top sit electronic attestations of attributes, or EAAs. These are specific data points from trusted sources: a bank account identifier, a university diploma, a driving license, or professional certificates. When an attestation is qualified, it's issued by a qualified trust service provider and enjoys a legal presumption of accuracy across the EU, replacing manual document checks with cryptographic proof. eIDAS 2.0 doesn't just tweak trust services. It broadens the toolbox you can rely on. Think of three big clusters. First, familiar capabilities get stronger. Website authentication and qualified signatures or seals remain the backbone for proving who is involved and that they approved this. Second, new services address what happened, when, and with which data. Electronic ledgers give legal weight to tamper-evident logs and timestamps. Electronic archiving protects the long-term legal value of documents. Third, remote QSCDs and attestation of attributes support cloud signing and high-assurance data for wallets, enabling scalable, cross-border digital processes. Under eIDAS 2.0, this is no longer just about accessing public e-government portals. The framework is being pushed deep into the private sector, starting with critical and heavily regulated industries. If your business already has to perform strong customer authentication by law, there's a high chance you'll be required to accept the EUDI wallet as a valid way to identify and authenticate users. So treat eIDAS less as a niche public sector regulation and more as a foundational layer for how customers will log in, sign, and transact across key digital services in Europe. Interoperability is the non-negotiable core of eIDAS 2.0. A wallet issued in one member state must be accepted in all others in a consistent way and at a predictable assurance level. To make that work, the EU is defining common technical frameworks, standards, and certification schemes. For you as a relying party, this is what finally turns Europe into a true digital single market for identity and trust. eIDAS 2.0 isn't just a compliance exercise, it creates real strategic value. First, efficiency. By consuming trusted identities and credentials, you can streamline KYC and onboarding, automate more checks, and shorten time to revenue. Second, fraud reduction. Standardized, high-assurance credentials make identity theft and synthetic identities harder and risk models more accurate. Third, market expansion. A common European identity layer makes cross-border customer acquisition and service activation much easier. There is a clear trade-off. On one side, you gain business upside, faster onboarding, far fewer manual checks, and a visible boost in user trust that supports near one-click customer journeys and cross-border growth. On the other side, you take on obligations, proper API integration, strong security and GDPR alignment, and in some sectors, mandatory acceptance of wallets. The key is to treat risk as a design input, not an afterthought, especially around attribute misuse, wallet compromise, and over-reliance on a single vendor. To turn eIDAS 2.0 into concrete action, begin by mapping your highest value use cases: onboarding, login, high-risk approvals, and any regulated signing or age checks. Then assess readiness. Where do your current processes already meet eIDAS, PSD2 or GDPR standards, and where are the gaps? Next, outline integration at a high level. Which systems need wallet or trust service APIs, what verification service you'll use, and how fallback flows will work. And finally, plug into the ecosystem. Join pilots, consortia, and large-scale projects now, instead of waiting for 2026. eIDAS 2.0 turns digital identity into core infrastructure. Relying parties move from optionally recognizing identities to having to support wallet-based interactions. Users gain more control over their data, while you gain higher assurance signals to reduce fraud and streamline onboarding. Treat this as a structural shift, not a checkbox. The organizations that experiment early will set expectations for everyone else.